The Climate Change Action Plan here in Peterborough says that 39% of the emissions come from housing and 30% come from transportation. And transportation is pretty hard for the city to get at because it requires legislation or perhaps subsidies from higher levels of government.
But we could acquire a fleet of buses.
But we could acquire a fleet of buses.
What are their costs? How do we do it?
They cost 50% more than a regular diesel bus to purchase, but they cost a lot less to operate. However, you bring up a really good point. It requires an infrastructure to be able to run it, and we don't have that in place, and we haven't started working on it. And I know in the budget, in the city budget, in the municipal budget, there was talk of transportation of buses with alternative energy sources, they called it. And I don't know what they mean by other than electricity. There could be hydrogen, but my goodness, hydrogen is far away from being available.
Stick some solar panels on the roofs of buses and see how far they run.
Yeah, that'll get you a couple of blocks, maybe.
You just asked an interesting question, and I think, as the person at the table who's going to outlive the rest of us, what would you like to see? $500,000 climate change reserve. What would you like to see, Malaika, that budget go towards?
Yeah, I think it's great that the city has done that. It's obviously not enough to do all the things that we need to do, but it's a great start. And there's so much we could do. I think electrifying the buses would be huge in the city. Working on more complete cities, so making the bike infrastructure and improving that so that we can encourage more cycling, since right now we don't have much infrastructure for that, and therefore not as many people can do it. Retrofitting homes and buildings and things that would still cost a lot, but maybe not quite as much as buses. Yeah, there's so much we could do, and I think it's so important that the city has put this money aside to start working towards that.
Yeah, and we got two big building projects on the horizon. At some stage, we're going to build a new twin pad competitive pool, and we're going to build a new memorial center. So we should be looking at net zero emissions of both of those modern buildings that we're going to have, particularly the whole issue of swimming pools, heating water is a very energy consuming process. Those are kind of things I think that you could really engage the public and be quite exciting for the public to be big participants in.
I'm curious, you said bike infrastructure, and if you talk to people at City Hall and City Council members, they'll tell you that Peterborough is ahead of the game on bike infrastructure and all that stuff. You obviously don't think so. What would you like to see as a change in the way the city does its bike lanes, et cetera?
I think we're moving forward. We do have bike lanes now, which we didn't before, which is amazing, but I think more protected bike lanes so that people feel safe and that the cars feel safer with having bikes near them, so that everyone can feel safe and more able to do it.
What's the standard for that now? Is it concrete dividers or like a fence style thing? What do people?
Yeah, I know there's lots of different styles. Concrete is probably the way people would feel the safest. There's different ways of cones or different gardens in the middle. So many different ways the city could do it.
The city did a pilot project up George Street, right where the Vinnie's is now, and they had used concrete planters. So you have. It looks kind of pretty where you get
you can actually see that on screen.
Some greenery installed onto the street, and you still have that layer of protection for cyclists. I forget who I was talking to recently, but I was saying that it feels safer for both the drivers and for the cyclists because I'm an amateur cyclist. I only started a couple of years ago. I didn't know how to ride a bike until I started this job at Peterborough this week. And I'm not comfortable on the road. I'm not comfortable sharing a space with a vehicle because I'm not comfortable being treated like a vehicle, largely because of the amount of time I spend falling down. So I feel like
so you're not just an amateur, you're really bad at it.
Oh yeah, I am just atrocious at cycling. But I feel like more people would participate, and I'll gladly hop into a protected bike lane like that. But ask me to merge traffic on Lansdowne Street, and I'm gonna turn the opposite. I'm gonna hop off the bike and walk down it on my bare feet.
Yeah, no, cycling paths is a really important thing to do, and we are doing it. We are moving forward. I have no way of knowing whether Peterborough is ahead of the game, as council says, or not, but we're doing it. We're moving forward. Toronto has moved forward tremendously, in spite of claiming that it was a war on cars. It was really powerful, some of the things that they did. And I think we're doing the right thing here. We're moving in the right direction.
There are gaps in cycling infrastructure that need to be filled, and I think noticeably Clonsilla is a pretty large gap. And I think, you know, the infilling of Charlotte Street is going to go some way, but then they changed their plan, so it's not all of Charlotte Street now. But there, you know, there are little spaces being filled in here and there that add to that. But
And they've just opened the latest one coming up, the old rail bed from Lansdowne Street, angling into the downtown, which will be widely used. I used to bike on that a lot just when you rode along beside the railroad tracks, so having a path there will be great.
So I'd like to go back, if I could, to another aspect that Jeff talked about, which was housing. You know, because you know there's new builds, but we still have people built housing buildings that people are going to live in for an awfully long time, and some of them, especially the ones that were built a long time ago, are very energy inefficient and use an awful lot of energy. And we have available to us here in Ontario legislation that allows. It's called local improvement charge. It was introduced by your government, by Kathleen Wynne.
Yes.
And I have a little personal story about that. I was traveling in Wales with a choir, and I spoke to the climate change commissioner in Wales. He told me about their program. Came back. My daughter sent me this thing. I sent it back to him, and he said, yours is better than ours. Anyway, we have that, but it's not easy for a municipality to set that up. But what it can allow, once it's done, is for people to borrow money against the value of their house and have it kind of added as a lien on their house almost. And
So why does nobody know about this?
because it's really hard to do, because of the infrastructure for Peterborough to set it up on its own would be really too hard. So it needs to, the infrastructure, like all of the tools and the advertising and the computer programs that would need to be put in place to run it, need to be created at a higher level.